Welcome to the Open Book with Amy and Tommy. But this week, it's just Amy. Tommy is off finishing the Camino with our youth and youth leaders. And we look forward to their return and hearing about their experience and all that they've learned and all the ways that they have grown and have been shaped through this journey together. As we continue our journey in seeking peace together, I want to begin by considering this question. Other than God, who knows you better than anyone else? We'll bring God back in a few minutes and in our study, but we're going to begin by thinking about being known. Who knows us, and how did that person get to know so much about you? And as you're considering your own person, please feel free to pause this or think as I speak. And then if you want to pause and consider your own answer, or if you're watching this with others, pause and share your responses with each other. You may also want to stop and write that person a note or send them a quick text just to thank them for being such a good and faithful friend to you. For me, that answer is easy. That's my sister, Tracy. As many of you likely know, I have an identical twin, and so we like to joke that we've been best friends since before we were even born. But my whole life, she has been a key player and a significant part of everything that I did. When we were growing up, because of my dad's work, we moved every few years. And so she was my one and constant and faithful friend. And although since we went to college, we have lived in different zip codes, and most often different states, sometimes even different countries, we have remained the closest of friends. So the time together, the history, and I don't take for granted, not all siblings have the close-knit relationship that we do. So I'm just grateful for the gift of my sister and how well she knows me, and what I need, and what I enjoy, and what gets on my nerves, and all of the things. And so just knowing and being known is such a gift of relationships, and something that we're going to explore together today. As I said when I first asked the question, other than God, who knows you better than everyone else? Because we do know that no one knows us and no one loves us the way that God does. And we have been in our Seeking Peace Together study. We have been focusing on seeking peace with God. This week, we'll begin to focus on seeking and finding peace within ourselves. But as I prepared for today, I really thought about how connected those two things are. I'm not sure that we can have peace within ourselves if we don't have peace with God. And we're going to be reading from Psalm 139 today, which is a psalm about how God knows us completely, is with us always, and loves us so much. And so this is a great psalm to move into thinking about how we find peace within ourselves, because a key starting part of that is also having peace with God. Before I read our psalm, though, let's think about, I want to give some context to it. David is the author of this psalm, King David, and just remembering some of his history. He was chosen and anointed to be the king of Israel when he was still a young shepherd boy. He had no preparation, no birthright, nothing outside of being the one that God chose to be king. Now, he didn't become king right away. Saul was still king. And you'll remember Saul was threatened by David and that David had been appointed as king. And so David spent time in his young adulthood running and hiding from Saul, who wanted to kill him. But David did become king and reigned for a long time and was known as a successful and beloved king of Israel. But we also know that he wasn't perfect. There were many mistakes he made along the way. Like the time that he committed adultery with Bathsheba and then had her husband killed in battle so that he could marry her, and tried to hide and disguise all of these things. So David was a good king. David was not a perfect king. And let's keep him and his story in mind as we read our psalm today. We're going to be reading Psalm 139, verses 1 through 18. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You searched out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before. You lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high that I cannot attain it. Oh, where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle in the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God! How vast is the sum of them! I try to count them. They are more than the sand. I come to an end, and I am still with you. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. This is one of my favorite psalms and has been for a significant part of my life. When I was in 6th grade, I had to memorize this psalm. And so these words just became a familiar language, and this became guiding words in my own spiritual journey. Remembering that there was no place I could go where God would not find me, where God would not meet me. That God created me and has been with me from the beginning and would continue to be with me. And then I remember several years down the road when I was a new mom and spent a lot of time reading with Sophia. One of the books that we would read is The Runaway Bunny by Margaret Wise Brown. You may have heard this story, you may have read it to your own story, but it's a story of little baby bunny and its mama bunny, and the baby bunny just wants to get away from its mom and says, well, I'm going to go and do this. And the mom says, well, if you're going to do this, I'll do that. Examples are, I'm gonna run away. I'm gonna become a boat. And then the mom says, well, I'll become the wind that helps guide the boat. And so the baby just continues to try to figure out how to get away from its mother and its mother's love, and discovers that it just can't. This is a great, both parallel to our relationship with God, but also parallel to this psalm. And I remembered this psalm as I read this story to my own daughter, just thinking about, I love her always, and I will love her no matter what. And God loves me just as much, if not more. And what a remarkable gift that is. One thing I've told our children in Bible study over and over, and I have told you all in this study as well, is that this is a common phrase that I share with our children. There is nothing you can do to make God love you anymore. There is nothing you can do to make God love you any less. And just resting in that full love is such a good thing for me, and is good news that I like to share for others, or share with others. So as we read this psalm today, and knowing and thinking about David writing it, and wondering at what point in his kingship did he write these words, and how are these words reflected, and what do these words have to say to him after he was chosen and anointed by God? How do they connect when he is hiding from Saul, who is out to get him? How do these words impact him and rest on him after Bathsheba and having her husband murdered? So at different points and different stages and for different reasons, when we say, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? They resound differently in us. Sometimes it reminds us that there is a safe place, and sometimes it reminds us that there is accountability. And so as we read this, we can reflect on times in our own life and seasons in our own life where this passage was both a comfort and times when it was a challenge. And when did we need these words the most? Sometimes it's in those challenging moments that we need the truth of these words, that God knows us and has known us. There was an interesting part as I read that stood out to me, that talks about, even if I go and try to hide in the darkness, and so everything around me becomes night, even there you still see me, because night is as bright as day and darkness is as light to you. And then it transitions into, for it was you who formed my inward parts, you knit me together in my mother's womb. And so I think even there, as we are knitted together in our mother's womb, that is a place of darkness. That is a place where light does not touch. And even there, God is present and knows us. And so as I've read this passage, I'm thinking about, even in those hidden places, even literal and metaphorical, those places where we are hiding or withdrawing, God is present with us. As I read this and I've reflected on that, I've been thinking about Jonah and Jonah's story as well. You'll remember God told Jonah to go to Nineveh, and Jonah didn't want to, so did his own thing and ran away and hopped on a boat going in a different direction. But then a storm comes, and everything gets to the point where Jonah just has to confess and make things right and take responsibility for his actions. Where can I go from your presence, O Lord? And can we run away? Can we escape? Um, and we know, from our own experiences as children, and in some cases having and working with children, when they do something wrong and they try um, to cover and hide it, but it's very, very obvious. I remember a kid trying, I think about children and food, and so hiding things in a napkin, trying to hide some food in a cup of milk, slipping it under the table to the dog. But sometimes we think that we're hiding things really well, or we can just kind of cover up and mask and make something disappear. But with God, we are fully known, and so all things are known. We know from all of our relationships, if there is something that we try to hide or hold back from someone, and I'm thinking about our relationships with family and friends and coworkers and bosses and employees, that when we try to hide something, it creates a barrier between us, and that leads to unrest. And so the same thing is true when we are living um, with with sin, with our mistakes, and we try to hide it, mask it, excuse it, cover it up. It only creates conflict and unrest. And so we can't have peace with God or ourselves when we are being dishonest about who we are and what we have done. And so I want us to wrap our time together today thinking about confession. With confession, what we do is whatever we're holding in, it helps us release that and be open to and with God. And through that, find peace in both our relationship with God and within ourselves. So the good news of the psalm is that we are loved in all places and in all times. And so as we begin our time of confession, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to imagine that you are in a safe place, surrounded by the love of God. I want you to ask God to help you see yourself as He sees you. And as you do that, remember that God sees you absolutely and with love. So join me as we pray and confess anything we need to God. Thank you for joining us for the open book today. We'll be back together again next week as Tommy continues us on this journey of seeking peace within. Go in peace.